Welcome to the Regen Brands podcast. This is a place for brands, retailers, investors, and other food system stakeholders to learn about the consumer brands supporting regenerative agriculture and how they're changing the world. This is your host, Kyle, joined by my co-host, AC, who's going to take us into the episode.
On this episode, Kyle and I are flying solo to bring you some updates and thoughts coming out of Natural Products Expo West 2025. What are the latest industry trends we're tracking? What was the state of regenerative at this year's Super Bowl of CPG? What were the biggest regen wins from the pitch slam to NEXTYs to fundraising announcements? We dive into all the most important regen CPG topics, including certification presence, new product highlights, and new information on increasing consumer awareness and demand for regenerative products. We break down the activation of the I Heart Regen campaign and celebrate the success in building community. Plus, we offer some key insights and stats you can't get anywhere else. Whether you were at the show or not, drop us a note with your major takeaways or other topics you'd like to see us discuss. Let's dive in. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Regen Brands podcast. Kyle and I are coming to you today with the classic Expo West recap. And there's quite a lot to discuss here, partner.
There is, yeah. You know, we had a killer week last week. It's great to see everybody in person and connecting. And for me, the thing I'm most proud of this expo is not getting sick, quite honestly. I feel like maybe a tiny bit nasally, but aside from that, like no sickness. And I really hope that's the case for the majority of the people who came. So that's huge.
Hey, what's the shot clock on that? Because it's only Tuesday. So if it gets to tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and you get sick, did you still get out of Expo unscathed is the question.
That's a good question. Last year I was feeling it Thursday night. So before I even flew home. So the fact that I flew home Friday and we're now at Tuesday makes me feel like I'm pretty good. But, knock on wood, you never know these days. So yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer. We need somebody with a more scientific background in transmissible sickness.
There's no better way to guard your immunity than to over-index on regenerative samples at Expo. So, I think we're in a good spot.
True. Very true. Cool, man. Well, let's start high level. Give us the data. What happened at the show?
Yeah, so we want to try and do an even better job tracking this, but got a lot of positive feedback on what we kind of provided before the show in terms of some metrics and also the booth guide. Our final count of brands supporting regenerative agriculture that we're exhibiting was 65. There's probably 5 or 10 more that we need to add that I missed before the show, but saw at the show. So 70 plus exhibitors supporting Regen Ag, which we define as, they have some sort of regenerative claim on at least one product, or they're broadly doing some sort of verifiable and documentable kind of work in their supply chain and talking about that to consumers at a broader marketing level. So long story short, that's something that we feel like we want to continue to track to see kind of what is the growth in that. I think that's important. As that relates to the broader industry and the broader event, I think that's also a good metric to track. So there was around 3,200 exhibitors, 900 were first-time exhibitors. There's a ton of non-brand exhibitors. So I actually need to probably reach out to the New Hope team and try and figure out just how many of those 3,200 were brands, because that's really what we want to track is how many brands are supporting Regen Ag and how many brands are exhibiting. But that's still, 70 divided by 3,200, just basic math. That's more than 2% of all exhibitors supporting Regen Ag. I bet it's actually higher than that. And like I said, that's not indicative of just brands. But I do believe that's an increase over historical numbers. We'll start tracking that year over year and actually have kind of that data for everybody. But I just felt at a high level, Regen was very present and seen at the show. How did you feel about that from a qualitative perspective in relation to previous shows?
I'm definitely biased, right? I spent the majority of my time at Regen booths looking for Regen food, looking for Regen brands. That being said, it didn't seem as hard to do that as it has in previous years. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It seemed like there were more frequent Regen booths, which I call safe spaces at Expo West. You can go and have a safe space at a Regen booth. So yeah, again, like obviously we're biased and we work in this, I don't want to call it the regenerative silo, but we're very focused on this work. So I think we noticed it a little bit more. Um, but yeah, it did seem present. And more importantly, I think the conversations I had with the retailers, like their interest in regenerative, in particular ROC, which we'll get to later, seems to be higher than ever. So the trend does feel real. And I think that this expo was a show of strength and a positive data point for the regenerative movement. And that's really cool to see.
Well, I mean, since you just mentioned that, we can go there, which is like one of, I think, our big collective takeaways is ROC, ROC, Regenerative Organic Certified is like kicking ass. It's very apparent to me, and I think both of us, that like they are the clear leader right now. They were super present across many of their member brands, if not all their member brands. I saw their logo and emblem on various different ingredient suppliers and other players in the space. Now, granted, I'm walking those areas pretty fast, but I thought I saw it a lot, and it was a large part of, I think, what those people were trying to feature. So yeah, Rock is crushing. I think their brands are doing a really nice job with PR around the event as well, and kind of touting it and getting SKUs, confirmed and rolled out. So just tip of the cap, like they're crushing it right now.
I totally agree. I think as people who look for regenerative anything, it was really easy to find rock. And outside of Climate Day, I want to give, Christine Root and Regenified in particular a shout out for some of their presentations and panel participation. But outside of that, it was difficult to really like find and notice any level of continuity for any of the other major certifications. And we're not sharing this information to try to bash anyone or lift any other one up. We want to give Rock the kudos they deserve for the fantastic work they're doing, and just highlight a potential opportunity for the other certifications out there to maybe make a little bit more of a splash or a presence with some of their member brands.
Yeah, it's our job to support all of them, but also objectively report on what we see in the marketplace. And, to kind of round out and agree, I thought Christine absolutely killed her part of her panel where she was presenting that data from that consumer research show. I'm super bullish on Regenified. I'm all in on Regenified long term. I think that they're going to do great things and have a bunch of brands and be more kind of recognizable and present. A Greener World came into the event with some big news, certifying California Olive Ranch, which I think was like 4,000 plus acres. I think that's a big get for them, and that's some big news for them. Land and Market is I know going through some personnel transition. So I'm interested to see kind of where they go and what happens with them. They have seemed to somewhat regress a little bit over the past few years, which, I shared with a couple of people at the show, was extremely disappointing to me because I don't want to pick favorites, but I like how focused they are on outcomes. And I almost would say they really are the best methodology in like verifying the outcomes of regeneration on land. And I always saw them as the standard bearer and kind of, the exact term I want is escaping me, but for the animal piece, for the animal integration piece, and really like the livestock systems. And I think we need to continue to feature that and focus on that. So yeah, just interesting time in the cert landscape.
I agree with everything you said, and to Rock's credit, and I don't know if this is like a market share grab on their part, but it seems like I've seen more Rock certified meat than ever before. And to your point with Land and Market and their EOV program maybe making less of a splash, I don't know if what exactly is happening behind the scenes there, but again, we're just observing what we see at the show. So worth calling out.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of that Rock meat boom is really just from the one big Australian company, Hewitt, that I believe, I know Applegate is sourcing all their rock meat from Australia, and my guess is it's from them. We know Charcut Nouveau is sourcing from them because Eric told us on the podcast. So my assumption is that is what's really the big domino there.
I say that plus, Star Walker is the only other one I know firsthand, based in California, with Rock Beef and Rock Pork, as we learned on the podcast. But outside of those two, maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah. But regardless, overall, I think Regen was much more present and recognizable. Rock is clearly kind of kicking ass. And the other certs have some other recent wins, I think that can be celebrated and are noteworthy as well. So anything else to add on kind of the cert roundup?
No, maybe we'll dive into it a little bit later, but want to dive a little bit deeper into some of the information learned from Christine's presentation. I thought
Yeah.
there were some really prescient points there that we should discuss, but we can get there later.
Yeah. Well, let's chat some other regen wins. We have a big list here, so we'll kind of just peel them off and maybe add some commentary to each one. Super excited. Number one, that Recoup won the pitch slam. Susan absolutely crushed it. She gave a shout out to the Regen Brands Coalition in her deck and verbally, which just
Hell yeah,
made my heart flutter as I witnessed her just dominate her pitch. So that was really, really cool. And also Wild Orchard, Michael from Wild Orchard came in second. So just amazing to see two Regenerative brands taking the top spots, two Rock brands taking the top two spots. And we've now had Regen brands come in first and second the last 2 years of the pitch slam, which I think is a real testament to the strength of those four brands and also the strength of kind of this movement and the momentum that we have and how it's resonating with people, hopefully also outside the bubble. I mean, those folks are still in the natural products bubble, but they're not maybe necessarily directly in the Regen bubble like we are. So congrats to Susan, Siwa, and Recoup, and congrats to Michael and the team at Wild Orchard. Just huge ups and amazing work.
totally agree. And I don't know if it's like the biggest deal. Like, I don't think that any brand is looking at the NEXTY or Pitch Slam or NEXTY award winners and like, okay, I want to make sure I innovate to win one of these awards next year. I don't think that's the case. But I do think brands who are looking at, okay, what's up and coming? What are the trends that people are noticing? I think it's good validation for regenerative products in general. So any win that we can secure is good for the entire movement. So yeah, kudos to Susan, kudos to Michael. And we're stoked to have regenerative products, spotlighted in this capacity.
Yeah. One thing from each of their pitches that really stood out to me was Recoup's already their ability to be at a competitive SRP on shelf, I think is going to be really key to their growth and is a huge kind of competitive advantage that I don't know how many other regenerative brands at their scale and size can really tout. So that really stood out to me. And then, Michael having bootstrapped Wild Orchard to where they are all the way without taking any external capital and just now kind of raising for the first time was super impressive. And that dude is just a hustler. I forget.
He is, dude. He's the man.
Yeah. I think he said on stage how many demos he's done in person in the Q&A. And I think he did like 40 or 50 plus demos himself, last year. And so just great vibes guy. First team, all vibes, Michael.
He's a madman. When I can't imagine like somebody who doesn't even drink caffeine, if I'm like in a store and like Michael Hamm is demoing to me, it's like I'm buying this product regardless. You know what I mean? Like he's that level of good. So
yeah.
I don't want to say it's like the best place for him to be spending time, but he probably has one of the highest conversions rates of any demo rep on that product, no doubt.
Yeah, he said it's been really great for their Whole Foods business because they are significantly more expensive than a lot of the other options, right, at the store. But as soon as he gets in front of people, he gets people to taste it. He gives them the story. He said it's really moving the needle. So it's good to hear and see. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, well, next up on the list, huge news from Good Sam, closing a $9 million Series A. So kudos to Heather and the whole team over there at Good Sam. That's a big deal. And in my recollection, that's the largest Series A I've seen from any regenerative brand. Curious to get your take as you are the investment guru of the two of us. I was going to say guy, then I was going to say guru, and I just got stuck at goo.
I could be a goo. That sounds kind of cool.
I dig
it. Yeah, huge win for the Good Sam team. Just major tip of the cap, major round of applause for them. I'm so happy for Heather and that whole crew. Just a team of pros. Like they just go about their business in such a legitimate way. I really appreciate that about them. And they weave a lot of regenerative business ideals and also activism in that, but never in a way that seems to me off-putting or charitable is not the right word. I don't know. I hope people understand what I'm trying to say. Like they're pros.
They're pros and they're authentic with their mission in like every single capacity. So maybe that's a better way to get to what you're trying to say.
Yeah. And I think it's a huge win for regenerative brands. I cannot think of off the top of my head without, scouring through the data as well, a bigger Series A for Regen brand. It's a huge one. It's a huge win for a female founded and led company because they still do receive such little amount of venture capital, just internationally. I think that's a lot better in the natural foods and CPG space, but it's still an issue. And then third, which Heather alluded to this in a LinkedIn post that she kind of put out announcing the raise, all the money mostly is from LATAM. It's from VCs in Latin America, where Good Sam's doing a lot of really cool work sourcing. And so that's an amazing win. I think that they had the ingenuity and the creativity to go to those sources of capital to get this funded, but it's also extremely disappointing that we couldn't find domestic investors to believe in this mission and support them in a similar way. I think Desert Bloom wasn't on the round, so they are an American investor. So it wasn't completely void of American participation, but it was definitely led by these groups in LATAM, which once again, I think there's two truths there. Great that Good Sam solved this cash flow problem, this financing problem with people that are really convicted and really understand what they're doing on the ground with these farmers. And also how do we get more American investors to care more and really understand the impact and financial viability of these models that are being built with smallholder farmers in the global South, but then coming to the American marketplace to realize full margin on these items.
I think it's a really good point, and I don't mean to play devil's advocate, but part of me wonders if Good Sam's model was primarily sourcing from North American farms, whether or not
Right.
those investors would be more interested in investing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just a theory, and again, not trying to diminish the work or the fact that it's still disappointing in any capacity, but just want to call that out. In my mind, it to a degree makes sense that Latin American funders are looking to support this type of business because a lot of that money is going to end up going back into those economies. So,
yeah, and I think it's 100%. And I think it's important to note, which Heather did as well in the post, they're selling a bunch of stuff that can't be grown in the United States. So
super fair point.
It's Americans are still going to want this. Americans are still going to want to eat it. We still want it to be grown regeneratively for the planet. And we want to support those communities that are really growing it. And so to me, it's a win-win-win-win-win, all the wins. At a time, especially when the rhetoric is kind of anti-globalized trade and tariffs are coming and, a lot of kind of nationalistic ideals, which I don't think is always the wrong answer for everything. But for these commodities, it's we cannot grow them here. We need to buy them from other places. We need to support those other places correctly. We need to build regenerative supply chains from them, with them. So yeah, just huge win for those folks and big ups to the Good Sam team.
Yeah, super fair point on the tariff piece. It's we can't grow bananas in the United States.
Yeah.
So if you like bananas, you're paying a premium regardless. And that strategy of blanket tariffs just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense in those specific commodity crops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Well, let's get to NEXTYs, man. I was reviewing the outline you put together prior to us starting this podcast episode, and there's stuff on here I didn't even know was real, what was happening. So great job pulling this list together. But walk us through some of what you found at Expo.
So some disclaimers up front would be NEXTYs are really hard to track from a regen perspective because a lot of these items are new and they haven't hit the marketplace yet. So we have not seen them in retail, and many of them don't even have a web page on the brand's website. So we don't know for sure if they have a regenerative claim or not. Maybe it's on the front of pack, maybe it's on the back of pack, maybe it's not on there at all. There's two key things that we're trying to track. One is how many brands supporting Regen Ag are finalists and NEXTY winners, and we already defined what supporting Regen Ag means. And then how many products actually have a regenerative claim that are finalists and winners. So according to my math that I can do with the information that I currently have, we had 11 brands supporting Regen Ag that were actual NEXTY winners, and then 5 of the products had regenerative claims. And once again, some of these, we haven't talked to the people. We don't know much about their supply chain, so we haven't fully vetted them. We're just going off of what's on the packaging or what we can find, online. But I'll just run down the full list and then we can kind of peel off some to maybe chat about. So Groundwork Coffee, their organic cold brew coconut latte was the NEXTY winner in the coffee and tea category. From what I can see, they do not have a regenerative claim on it, but they obviously sell a lot of rock coffee. So that one was kind of brand supporting, but maybe not product with a Regen claim.
Just shout out to Groundwork because they were early to Regen in the category.
Yeah.
So just want to give them props for that. Not to say that anybody who's new to Regen is like a me too, because I don't think that's the case. We want to see more new brands in there, but also want to give credit to the OGs. So, shout out to the OG.
Absolutely. This is a brand we haven't talked to yet, but they have the word regenerative on the front of the pint. So Ice Cream for Bears, their Honey won the frozen dessert category. So that is a product with a Regen claim. Once again, I don't think either one of us know anything about their supply chain. I got some business cards at their booth, so we will follow up and either have them on the podcast or discuss with them. But that was a winner with the word regenerative on the front of the pint.
I did not even know this brand existed until this podcast. So I'm super bummed I missed them at the show. I just pulled up their website and their branding is amazing. Their picture is like a photoshopped grizzly bear eating a salmon that's like flying up the river, but the salmon has been replaced by a pint of ice cream. So I love this brand so much. I want to learn more about their supply chain and their story. But it sounds cool. Sweet and only with honey, grass-fed, regenerative. Like it ticks the boxes for me as a consumer. And definitely want to learn more.
Yeah. The third one was Diesel Family Ranch. Their Primal Blend Ground Turkey won the NEXTY in the meat, dairy, or animal-based product category. Don't believe this is their Regenified turkey. I could not see that on pack or anything. But obviously they're supporting Regen in a big way. We've had Heidi on the podcast, so congrats to Diesel. I think we're going to continue to see that Primal Blend just go gangbusters across all these different categories of meat.
No doubt. And Regen or not, to your point, it's still fantastic to see these organs not being wasted or used as animal feed and to get back into the human diet. Obviously we're big fans of regenerative agriculture, but a core piece of that is human nutrition. This product ticks the human nutrition box. We don't know for sure whether it does or not for the Regen box, but I'm stoked to see this type of innovation.
Amen. The next one was Rumiano Cheese Company. Their Pepper Jack Queso won the NEXTY for certified organic product. Rumiano is an interesting Regen case study. I still have not figured out exactly kind of what the Regen story is. I've had a couple very, very brief conversations with people on their team. I know that they are sourcing all organic and I believe regenerative or some regenerative dairy for pretty much all their products, but I don't think they have any or a lot of products that have a Regen claim. So that's another one that's kind of like, hey, we know they're doing something. We're just not exactly sure what that is quite yet, but that would be in the whole like brand supporting Regen ag category more so than certified product.
Totally agree. Not too much for me to comment on this one, but I think it's one of those like quote sneaky Regen brands where maybe their full supply chain isn't identity preserved, so they can't make front of pack claims. But based on the information we have, it seems like they're supporting in some capacity. So take that with what you will.
The next one is Kodiak Cakes. Their Kernza Cakes, Flapjack, and Waffle Mix, if I can talk, won the NEXTY for pantry staples, which we've obviously talked about Kernza a lot on this podcast. If you listen to the show, you know kind of what Kernza is. It's a perennial grain that has huge potential if we can kind of swap it out, I think, for a lot of the other varieties that we currently use in the commodity grain world. This to me is also kind of like a little bit gray, but I would say it has a regenerative claim since it's branded all around Kernza, and Kernza is pretty much only grown in regenerative systems and is kind of by itself regenerative, I guess, in a way. But that was great to see. And I haven't had the product yet, but I want to try it.
I agree. I'd love to try it. And what's interesting about this list is it's starting to feel like that category is getting a little bit like Regen crowded. There's another winner we'll get to towards the end, but we got long table in there as well. So I think heirloom grains, regenerative grains is really a trend that's starting to surface, which is really interesting to see. Let's just throw it out there, man. Like Zac Efron's involved in Kodiak Cakes in some capacity. Like that's a dude who I can't remember the name of the show. Down to Earth.
Yes.
He's got a series where he kind of cruises around the world and he has done some stuff for Regen. So good on him for utilizing his celebrity to kind of raise awareness around regenerative products. And I'm stoked to see Kodiak innovating in that direction.
Yep. Amen. Agreed. And we need brands off taking Kernza. Like we are over supplied and under demanded from what I hear from the Kernza people, not to like a tragic degree, but like we need more off takers for Kernza. So I hope the SKU does amazingly well. I hope they can do more. I hope other brands, innovate, implement Kernza into their supply chains. Next winner was Belvis Belgian Chocolates. Their Armayari Bean Pure Origin Dark Chocolate won the NEXTY for People Forward product. I heard that this brand had a booth. I never saw them. I must have missed them if they did. But shout out to Cortland from Y Regenerative and the Regenerative NYC event. He did talk to, I believe, the gentleman that's leading this. And I think, according to our secondary sources, which is Cortland, the product is certified organic and regenified. And I also, from the picture in the NEXTY articles, it does say regenerative on the front of pack. So that's another brand we want to learn more about and just hear kind of what the story is. But I believe it's cacao sourced from Africa, and then it's a chocolate brand out of Belgium. So that's all I know at the moment.
You know, as two dudes who love chocolate, a couple of Regen bros who love chocolate, it's always great to see more chocolate in the category. I just pulled up their website, and it looks like they're into biodynamic and Demeter farming and Demeter certification, which is huge in Europe and Australia, New Zealand, and it's super legit. It's a very legitimate certification. So I would guess that their claims of regenerative are authentic, and if they're searching for or they've decided to utilize a regenified certification for the United States market, like, good on them. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, for some reason, we as a country, those in the United States who are listening, we don't really recognize Demeter or biodynamic. Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. So it's a bummer that they have to go with a different certification, but, you know, mm-hmm. is what it is. But based on my 30 seconds of research, this feels legit regen.
And we heard from some inside sources that Demeter / biodynamic might be getting a little bit more recognition in the regenerative space over here in the US based on some efforts going on. So I'll leave that as a little teaser that we could potentially have some more news on soon. But yeah, you summed that up well, brother. Thank you. This is a brand I'm really excited about having on the podcast. I think it's a super interesting innovation. I had not tried the products, but I saw a press release come out about them a few months ago that we included in the newsletter. Stoked Oats is the name of the brand, and their herby garlic oat rice won the NEXTY for certified regenerative product, which, you know, that was a tough group. It was 5 certified regenerative products. I talked to briefly Chanel and Simon, who are the husband and wife kind of co-founding team at Stoked Oats, and I had one of the SKUs. I don't know what flavor it was, but it was very good. I had just a quick little spoonful. And super interesting take on kind of like oatmeal, but more delivered like a rice. To me, it was like, is rice pilaf where you cook it and kind of the rice like swells and is kind of like thick? Is that what that is?
I mean, I think that kind of describes all rice and makes me question how much time you spend in your kitchen.
I'm not a rice expert, unfortunately, but congrats to them. I tried one of the products. We're going to get them on the show. And I thought the product was really good, the one that I had.
I'm super bummed I did not get to try this. And
this is right up your alley.
It is so up my alley, man. I cook grains all the time. As somebody who gets a bunch of bone broth at his house all the time, like I cook a lot of grains and bone broth. And based on my just look at the product, to me, it looks like an unrolled oat. Like a rolled oat is flattened. And that's typically what is traditionally used in oatmeals and things like that. This looks like an unrolled oat, so very similar to the shape of a grain of rice. And I mean, the name Stoked Oats, this is so up my alley. And their branding is like an old school tractor with like a flame coming out of the top. So I dig what they're doing. And even like they're focused on nutrient density, you know, nutrient dense superfoods to make you stoked. Like the messaging seems to be in line with our theory of what we need to pair with regenerative agriculture to get market conversion. So I'm excited to learn more about this branding and looking forward to the podcast episode with them.
Yeah, and they had a booth, so they obviously are trying to, I would assume, get more distribution in the American market. They are out of Canada, so I have no idea if they're like established in Canada, if they're kind of like a newer emerging brand, but we're excited to learn more. The next NEXTY winner was El Nacho for their MS Mango White Corn Tortilla Chips. I'm actually not sure if it's like M's Mango or how to say the name properly. I talked to Joe, the founder of this brand, a little bit on LinkedIn. He seems like a really good dude. They are sourcing certified regenerative corn from a greener world for these corn tortilla chips. So similar to Zach's Mighty. The whole brand is like about luchadors, or how do you say the Mexican wrestling kind of motif?
I think luchador is correct. I'm not an expert in that in any capacity, but Yeah, I think that's right.
My brain immediately just starts thinking of what's the movie? How can I
Nacho
forget
Libre.
the? Yeah, my brain automatically just starts thinking of Nacho Libre quotes, and I can't actually think of anything else. But it was great to see them get that recognition. I did not have a chance to try the chips at the show, but Joe and the team did have a booth, and we're definitely excited to have him on as well at some point.
I've got to go totally off topic right now because at the show we've been talking about a roast between like our quote isms, like our habits.
Yeah.
And I've
On the
already
podcast.
noticed today, like I've used the word capacity. I'm not even sure how many times. So I'm preemptively calling myself out on that one. I also think I've said the exact phrase "innovate in that direction" at least twice.
There you go.
I'm going to try to have a more biodiverse vernacular for this show. But circling back to El Nacho, yeah, their branding is fire.
Awesome.
It's literally a luchador jumping off the ropes of a wrestling match or a wrestling. Clearly, I'm not very into wrestling. I don't know, ring, if you will. But it looks fantastic, and I love that they're not. It's sort of like a sneaky regen. They're not.
Yes.
It's certainly not the. When you think of a regenerative brand, this is not what comes to mind for me, and they're truly trying to sell tortilla chips that are regenerative, which is really cool.
Yeah. So the actual SKU, the correct name is Miss Mango, because they're all like a luchador character. All the SKUs are luchador characters. So she's the queen, Miss Mango, hot honey mango and lime. Now I'm hungry and just want to eat 17 bags of tortilla chips. So thank you, Joe and team, for that gift. But yeah, excited to learn more about them and get them on the show for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy a variety pack right now. This looks awesome.
Hell yeah.
Pineapple barbecue, man. Count me in.
And also shout out to Zach's Mighty, switching to avocado oil. They posted something on their Instagram that someone sent me the other day. So love to see them making that switch. Shout out to Zach and the team. Love that they're switching out of seed oils and into avocado oil as well.
Hell yeah. Still the number one performing chip in guacamole per Zach's
Unreal
mission.
Yeah.
Good on him.
All right, last three here. This one's probably a quick one because I do not believe it has any sort of regenerative supply story, but Guy Herbs, OG, big supporter of Regen, has a rock certified farm, been on the show. Their metabolic activator SKU was the winner in the supplement trailblazer category. So just good to see them continue to lead and get the recognition that they deserve.
It wouldn't be a Regen Brands episode if I didn't have a book rec. I'm in the middle of reading. I'm in the middle of reading a book called Brain Energy, which talks about metabolic disease and the link with mental health across the country, which is, across the world, really. It's wild to read. I've learned a ton. And in particular, the importance of metabolism and mitochondria in particular. I don't know much about this SKU, but the fact that there's any innovation focusing on metabolic health, I think is incredible. And Gaia in general has done so much on their end to support Regen. So again, we don't know if this SKU is specifically Regen championing or not, but it's a really cool piece of innovation to see.
Amen. The next one is an interesting one. I wasn't super familiar with this brand, but Jovial Foods, their einkorn pancake and waffle mix won the Editor's Choice NEXTY. There were two actually recognized from the Editor's Choice category, which I believe is just the NEXTY judges picking out ones that maybe didn't win in their category but deserve some sort of recognition. But I don't know, you might know more about them as kind of like being in the field a little bit more than myself for a longer period of time, but they're the einkorn OGs. The SKU is rock, which you love to see. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this one?
So we in this house are huge fans of Jovial. My wife buys the einkorn flour, whole wheat. Like we go hard on Jovial, and they're sort of a sleeper, man. I remember like 10 years ago, competing against this brand with some other products that I represented. I'm like, what is this sleeper brand Jovial? Like, how are they still here? And the more I've learned about this brand, the more I've come to love them and champion them. And I'm excited to see their expansion into more categories and really bring einkorn into the fold. And for those who don't know, einkorn is like the OG wheat, non-hybridized wheat. So it's almost inherently regenerative in some capacities. Damn it, I said capacity again. In some instances, I'm going to call myself out. But yeah, I'm excited to learn more about this brand. Would love to get them on the pod and do a deep dive into einkorn because I think it's fascinating. So yeah, and again, this is the other one where it's now 3 different regenerative brands that we know of making some kind of a regenerative claim in that kind of like breakfast bake aisle, if you will. So exciting. I'm excited to try this.
Yeah. Hell yeah. The last one, which is also an Editor's Choice winner, which was a new brand that I believe is like very new that I wasn't familiar with before they were featured in the NEXTY stuff. Folkland Foods. Folkland is one word. They're Himalayan pink salt farm fries. Um, I don't believe there's a regenerative claim on the front of pack, and that's all I can find pictures of because there's nothing on their website yet. It seems like a very new brand with new SKUs, but they talk about being regenerative organic farmers a lot on the website. It looks like this is all vertically integrated and sourced from a potato farm in Pennsylvania, from what I can gather. So that one is definitely like a supporting Regen Ag, but when we see the rest of the package, it could turn into a product with regenerative claim as well. But it seems like a super cool brand story. Another brand I think we're looking forward to having on once we make the right connection with somebody. And it was good to see them get recognized as well.
Yeah, this is another one of those brands I had no information about. I had to do in this podcast. I'm pulling up their website and it looks authentic to me. I mean, there's like a picture of ducks on the ground. There's a picture of people standing next to a tractor like it just broke down. Like it feels like they're really trying to share their story. I also love that the oil used is olive oil. And this is another one of those opportunities where regen brands can lean into existing trends like seed oil free, and that can help to capture market share. And in particular, like people who are interested in avoiding seed oils, generally speaking, want to get the cleanest ingredients, right, and do what's best for their health. So another opportunity to continue to pair up with these claims that are moving the whole movement in the right direction. So excited to see this one pop up.
Mm-hmm. So that's like NEXTYs recap. Let us know how y'all feel about some of the data that we're trying to provide there and some of the commentary. I got some really good feedback at the show that it is valuable. But if you disagree or if you have other things that you'd like to see us track or talk more about, we're definitely all ears. Let's pop over to new products. Like what I feel like I never have enough time on the floor to see everyone I want to see, to talk as much as I want to talk to everyone, and to try as much stuff as I really want to. And obviously you and I are very focused on like just going to the Regen brands or the brands supporting Regen Ag booths. But what products stood out to you that you tried at the show?
I mean, like you, I did not get enough time to spend cruising the show, unfortunately. That being said, on the list that we have, I was able to try 3 of them. And the first one, I know we're both huge fans of Alex Ice Cream, but their Culture Cup to me is such a slam dunk piece of innovation. I could not be more excited for that SKU. I can't crush a full pint of ice cream and feel okay the next day. AC still can. But Alex Culture Cup
I
is like
have more capacity. I have more capacity for ice cream.
Fair. I appreciate you using my word.
To use your favorite word.
Yeah. So Alex Culture Cup is I don't know what the ounce is on there. Do you know off the top of your head?
I forget. Let me see if they have anything up on the website yet.
It's small. I'd say it's roughly maybe a quarter of a pint, maybe even less. And so think of it as like a single serve ice cream with like a cookie on top, with added probiotics for gut health.
Cookie's a little misleading. It's a chocolate shell. So it's
I
like
thought some of them actually had a cookie. Are they all just chocolate shell?
I think they are all just chocolate shell. Maybe I'm mint chocolate cookie was the SKU that was nominated for a NEXTY or finalist for a NEXTY. So I believe there's a cookie in the ice cream base, but they all just have that same chocolate shell on top, I believe.
You are correct. And what I love about that SKU is my favorite Ben & Jerry's flavor was mint cookies and cream. And now there's an Alex ice cream version of that in a small format with probiotics, which feels fantastic for me.
Alec posted a picture of the packaging, and it looks like the SKU is going to have 4 cups of 3.5 fluid ounce cups, 14 fluid ounce overall. I don't know how to make sense of that. I'm not smart enough to.
I also cannot make sense of that.
But they're small single serving cups, and they were really good and just rock solid. So congrats to Alec and David and the whole Alex team for putting that together.
Yeah. You go next. I'll share after that.
I've already said I thought the Stoked Oats SKU that I tried was impressive. So excited to have more of their products and learn more. Shout out again to Michael from Wild Orchard. He was sampling some RTD matcha, sourcing regenerative organic A2 milk from Alexander and doing an RTD matcha. He had one for the green matcha and one for the black matcha. And then he's using maple sweetener from the maple man, the legend, Michael Farrell, who's one of my favorite people in the space. And I thought it was really solid. They did like one production run to bring it to Expo and to have people sample it and kind of give feedback. Matcha is a really interesting thing to like nail the right latte with the milk and also with the sweetener. My girlfriend Summer is a big fan of matcha, so I am now.
My wife Heather's a big fan of matcha, so they need a matcha up together.
See, another thing to add to the list of overlaps for Kyle and AC. But I thought it was really solid, and I'm excited to see him bring that to market. And I think that's an interesting opportunity for Wild Orchard to go into the RTD space.
Agreed. And I think matcha is so approachable. It's really becoming a mainstay. Almost every coffee shop has a matcha version these days, which isn't to say it's like where he wants to be, but it's just a validation of like that's a good place to start innovating. So stoked to see that come out.
And this one that I'm going to tee up for this guy, he was floored by. This is probably his number one. That he was having an out of body experience when he tried this one.
That's true. The brand is called Diaspora, and they have a chai masala. And I love a good chai latte. I very rarely have one that I really enjoy because for the most part, they're way too sweet. And that drives me bonkers. I really like an authentic, very spicy chai that almost like warms you from the inside out. And it's quite hard to find. And that's both at the store and at coffee shops. So in my limited experience of like finding ones that I love, I just get really hooked on them. And this company on their website says they support regenerative agriculture. It's part of their branding. We don't know. I don't think they have a certification. We need to learn a lot more about them. But they do have a regenerative claim. And when I tried it, like AC said, I was floored. I was like, it's not just spicy. It was smooth, not too sweet. And I think I went back for at least 3 or 4 sample cups because it was that good. So I'm super excited to try this. And actually, I had forgotten that I took one home. It's sitting in my bag right next to me. So I'm going to make one as soon as this podcast is over. And I'm so thrilled.
Yeah, I had to drag this guy on his hands and knees out of that hall so he would stop drinking this chai. I also thought it was really impressive. I'm more of a sweet chai guy, and that's usually because the spicy chais are, to me, have a little too much bite or like a negative aftertaste, and they're not smooth like you said. But this was spicy chai that I could definitely drink and was super smooth. And like you said, the founder was not at the booth. We talked to a couple members of their team who were awesome, but looking forward to getting to know the founder better and learn more about the regenerative smallholder farmers that they're sourcing all the spices and other ingredients from.
No doubt.
What else we got on there, brother?
That's it for new products. And I just got to give a shout out to the Big Picture Foods team, in particular, Chris. I spent so much time, I spent more time at the Big Picture Foods booth than anywhere else in the show, just trying to eat raw, fermented, probiotic, like super delicious food that's good for my body. And he just hooked it up. Like I'd show up and he just like pushed the samples like to me, like just eat, dude, just eat whatever you want. So big thank you to Big Picture and to Chris for supporting my gut health and providing me with legitimate nutrition during the food show.
Love that. We can always count on Daniela and Chris for force feeding us fermented foods, which we appreciate.
So there's no force feed on my end. I'll eat everything they give me. Maybe it is for you, different experiences, but that my experiences, I will consume all they give me.
Daniela's like my expo mom. Every time I walk by the booth, she's like, "Have some. You need some? You want some?" I'm like, "Yeah. Give me like 17 more banana peppers, please. I'll take them."
It's good stuff.
Yeah. We have some other like high level observations, and we also have like the iHeart Regen campaign that's Regen specific. Where do you think we should go next?
I think we should talk about the iHeart Regen campaign. You put a lot of thought into figuring out how to execute that. I know a lot went into that, not just from you, but from Jelly Shot and others. So give us the recap. What did you think of how that all unfolded at the show?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with some gratitude. Obviously Jelly Shot did an amazing job with the visual assets and helping us put together a plan to kind of bring it to life at the show. So big shout out to them. Amazing work. I think it turned out really, really well. Huge shout out to all the Regen Brands Coalition members, the 19 that were exhibiting at the show that really got behind the vision and said, "Hey, like let's do something. Go ahead and go put together what you think that is, and we'll support it." And then shout out to you, shout out to Aaron, Katie, Connor, our team who really helped kind of bring it to life. And last but not least, definitely shout out to my girlfriend Summer for making a pretty epic jumpsuit for me with a white Levi's outfit that we put little red hearts all over. It was definitely a big hit at the show. I thought it would be well received, but I was overwhelmed by literally the hundreds of comments that I got the 2 days that I wore it. So that was really cool. But overall, I thought I saw it everywhere. Just like it's confirmation bias for you and I to say that, but like I do try and bring an objective lens to what you see. And other regenerative brands, other supporters of Regen, service providers, everyone was saying, "How do I get a button? How do I get a sticker?" That was really cool. And I couldn't think of an analog of seeing anything that was really executed in that way across a diversity of brands like that. Maybe you can think of something in the past. But just getting feedback from people that they heard people in the hallway, like looking at a shirt or looking at a button and saying that is everywhere. Like people that we do not know, that we don't know if they have any connection to Regen or not. Like that's the kind of buzz we wanted to create. So I was just super, super overjoyed to bring it to life and to have the support that we did. And I think let it be a positive thing for everyone at the show.
I agree. And, it sounds so simple and so easy, but it allowed for people to express their, what's the word I'm looking for? Enthusiasm for the regenerative movement that wasn't necessarily tied to a specific brand or certification in a way that was borderline unifying.
Yeah.
Like Christine Root, I think, was wearing it during her panel. So to get like stage presence is really cool from a certification. So that was awesome. It also, I cannot believe you forgot to thank your new favorite homie in the entire regenerative space, Vic, who hooked us up with the regenerative organic cotton shirts that we wore during the show.
Yeah, Vic is an absolute legend. Shout out to Gallant International, his company, for hooking us up with some rock shirts. And Vic also gave me an amazing pump up speech at the rock event on Monday. So, Vic, I appreciate you, brother. You're the man.
Hell yeah! Well, I thought it was awesome, man. I think when you first mentioned the campaign to me, I was like, that kind of feels really simple. And now I see the beauty in the simplicity after seeing how it was executed and how it was adopted by so many. So, just well done. I think it was really awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it has some legs. So we'll see how long we kind of roll with it and in what capacity we roll with it. The QR codes and the website that it led to, I think got less traffic than we wanted, but I think that's less about the methodology there or how great the web page was, because I think it was good, and more about just how crazy Expo is. Like probably a little unrealistic for us to expect people to scan a QR code at all these different brand booths. And, brands are trying to get buyers or whoever's at their booth to really understand just their brand and their products. And, Regen's going to be maybe in the top 10 of the things that they talk about. And then tying that back to like specifically the I Heart Regen campaign is I think just too low on the list for us to drive like really hard conversion. But from a top level awareness, vibes, unity, harmony, we nailed it. And I want to make sure we continue to play that role. Cause like it sounds, it sounds woo woo, but like that is a big reason why we do a lot of this stuff was we saw this like need for more harmonious energy in the space. And that's a role that we need to continue to play. So we'll see.
Totally agree, man.
Yeah. Other high level things at the show, I'll just share a couple from me and then curious to hear what you had. Like, hate the fact that Climate Day and Fresh Ideas compete with each other.
That was such a bummer.
Yeah, I thought Courtney and Caitlin put together a great agenda and a really well-run Climate Day. I really appreciate the opportunity to moderate a panel myself. But I just thought the room was thinner than it has been in the past and should be because of that new overlap with Fresh Ideas. Like there's a lot of people that want to go to both of those things, and it's tough for you to have to kind of commit time one or the other from 12 to 5. So I don't know how we could fix that, but I did not enjoy that. That was a negative. A positive was the non-staggering of North Hall versus Main Hall. So last year it was like insane to try and navigate the North Hall when that was the only thing open, whatever day that was, Tuesday or Wednesday. So it felt way more comfortable in the North Hall the day that all the entire floor opened. Thursday still felt crazy to me everywhere that I went. Like Thursday felt packed, especially in Hall E. But I think it was still a better flow just having the entire floor open the entire 3 days. So yeah, those are my big two. How about you?
I mean, those are really the biggies for me. I don't feel differently at all. If I kind of want to zoom out and think like, okay, what are some other just general high level trends that I may have observed at the show?
Yeah.
Um, it's to me there were three, and I saw a lot of dates, sweetened with dates, date based everything. So that's
And honey.
interesting.
I saw honey
Dates,
too,
honey,
like
so yeah,
natural sweeteners.
natural sweeteners. I think you nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really big. Caffeinated everything.
Yep.
Somewhere it's ironic to me that this is the Natural Products Expo, but I saw in some kind of a showcase somewhere it's like a coffee flavored Eggo waffle, which to me is just
Yes.
indicative of the fact that like if that's happening, we know caffeine is going
Right.
everywhere into
Right.
like consumable like physical food instead of just drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And then three was like Middle Eastern flavors, vibes, and Indian flavors, vibes in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different categories. So those are sort of like my top three non-regenerative trend takeaways from the show. Um, I don't really have strong feelings for or against any of them. I guess like putting caffeine into a product doesn't strike me as like incredibly innovative, though I understand the use case. 'Cause especially as people are, I think people are generally kind of moving away from coffee and looking for different alternatives to get caffeine. So
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Um, I might just be biased as someone who intentionally avoids caffeine. I don't want to see it creep into every other category, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm on the small end of that, market.
I second all those trends. I also think the whole like protein thing is obviously huge right now. So that was kind of expected going into the show. Like everything's going to have protein added, or here's the amount of protein in it. So that was another
Pause
one
on
that
the
stood out to
protein. Did
me.
you notice any specific like was it pea protein? Was it whey protein? Did you capture any of that? Because I actually didn't
Mm,
see it as much as you did at the show. And that's not to say that you're wrong. Just not I didn't observe it.
no, and I probably wasn't able to because I'm flying through, the halls so fast, trying to just focus on the regenerative brands. But I've seen it validated in a lot of the just general like trend follow up posts or articles as well. But
Hmm.
no, not any resonance on like specific sources. Honestly, on that one.
Got it. Worth noting. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. You go ahead. You see anything
No, you're
else?
good. What else? I've seen some discourse on LinkedIn about like people saying innovation was down versus people saying like you don't actually know what you're talking about. Innovation wasn't down. You just don't know how to like look for it or evaluate it. I'm not an expert in that category, but just from what I do know, I did think it was flat or down. And to me, it seemed more iterative than like revolutionary. Like I didn't leave the show saying like, wow, that's like a big change or like a huge new trend that I wasn't expecting or like a bunch of new brands in a specific category. Um, a lot of the ones where there was a major presence, like functional beverage or soda, like that's been happening for a few years. So it wasn't like a new thing. It felt to me like a lot of brands were really focused on refining and focusing, especially on internal operations and profitability versus like kind of chasing big new shiny objects, which I think is just very indicative of the macro environment that we're in right now. Um, so yeah, that was a couple for me.
I couldn't agree more. I think it makes complete sense to me that as capital becomes harder to access, less pie in the sky innovation is going to take place. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a very similar sentiments, both with my own observations at the show and with the buyers I was able to connect with. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, like what are some interesting things that you're seeing? Like, well, it's kind of like, more of the same in a lot of ways. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the brands are, to your point, like iterating and trying to adopt some of these bigger trends. Like you mentioned protein. Another one that we sort of alluded to before is like cleaner, like no seed oils. And
Mm-hmm.
people are focusing on those supply chain innovations where they're optimizing their LOIs, their list of ingredients, rather than major category expansions for the most part, because it's significantly cheaper to do. And it seems to be super on trend right now for a variety of reasons. And then stack Maha on top of that. And it really
Mm-hmm.
feels like people are trying to capture that. The other thing I didn't see as much as I expected to was GLP-1. I was really
Yes.
expecting to see a lot of GLP-1 stuff all over the place, and maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
because it's a trade show and it's not specifically, marketed for consumers. But I was expecting to see more of that direction. That I'm just realizing now I didn't really capture much of that. at least that I saw.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And I think related to all of that, I felt a greater awareness and conversation around like biohacking and longevity trends, especially when it comes to wearables and also to lab data that is now being democratized and made cheaper. Like people mentioned that company Function Health multiple times to me in personal conversations, and it was talked about in my panel, and I believe in some others. That's a company, for those that don't know, where you can get a bunch of labs done for supposedly a lot cheaper than, you know, if you had to go through your doctor or you went through the lab directly. But I think there's a really interesting tie between that democratization and the cheapening of those labs, these wearables becoming more abundant and less expensive, AI becoming more like in wellness and health and using that data to make recommendations or, you know, give you information, and then nutrient density and regen. And it's like, what's the confluence of all that going to be? The super glass half full, we want regen to succeed. We're very biased take on that would probably be, you know, all this data is going to proliferate and people are going to make healthier decisions. That is ultimately going to be undoubtedly regen when we have the data to say you should be eating more of this, that, or the other thing. But I think there's also a way where it could totally go awry. So just super interesting to watch. And I don't know exactly what I think is going to happen, but I feel the like next year or the year after, it's going to be really like a point of conversation, because all that biological research mixed with AI is going to explode, I think, in the next 12, 24, 36 months.
I totally agree with everything you just said. And I'm really glad that you tied it back to nutrient density as sort of this thing that we've been discussing for a few years now. I'm not saying we're the first or the only ones to be focusing on that term or that quality or that attribute or however you want to label it. But I think that was another one of those trends that shows itself, manifests itself in different ways in different places. And I think on stage in particular with some of the panels, it was very present. And then if you look at how brands are talking about their attributes, it was sort of like subliminally present. So I'm excited to see the natural products industry focusing more on that. And to your point, I think there is a world that bodes very, very well for regenerative agriculture. Of course, there's the other potential where, you know, the Sygentas and the Bayers of the world figure out how to create new pesticides, herbicides, some kind of spray that increase nutrient density and is still detrimental for soil health. Like that reality is possible. It feels really expensive and further away than improving our farming practices and implementing regenerative practices. So I'm hoping, as we all are probably listening here, that the continual focus on nutrient density improves the conversion rates for regenerative practices on arable land.
I agree with everything you said. I think they're interesting things to watch. I think there's two things that I'm thinking about or questioning or asking or looking to the future is like, where does bioavailability play into all of this? Because it's one thing to have the nutrient density, but if it's not bioavailable based on the way you're delivering it or processing it, or just because of some natural limitation of said product, ingredient, et cetera, then it's like, it's basically having great gas, but no car to like drive around. So, I'm super interested to see how that plays into, especially the wearables. And are we headed to a world where you have a wearable that's going to tell you the bioavailability, right? So something maybe has less nutrient density, but it's more bioavailable. So it's actually the thing that you should eat. And then is there a way for brands, products, et cetera, to kind of game the system and turn those not from a objective fact-based kind of source of recommendations to like a Yelp, like you're going to show up first because we paid you 10 grand or whatever. So I don't know. That's one thing that I'm thinking of. And then, you know, from an industry change perspective and a net gain of consumer demand increase for regenerative, like, is all of this just optimization of the existing healthy eating crowd where the demands on the people already doing good are just going to get harder and we're just optimizing the amount of healthy food that's already being eaten? Or are we going to have a net sea change increase in the amount of healthy food being eaten? Like that to me is a question that I don't really know. So those are the two things that I'm kind of pondering or sitting with.
Yeah, I think to your latter point, I think both will end up happening at the same time. To what degree, I don't know.
Mhm.
But especially the Maha movement does make me feel like there are more pantries today where people are concerned about what they're putting into their households and into their bodies than ever before, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And I really loved your question on the bioavailability piece because when talking with Eric from Audacious and some of these other nutrient density companies that are really focusing on some of the testing, it makes me realize how much work remains to be done. Not just in baselining quote nutrient density standards for specific commodity types. We'll go back to bananas. Like how much of XYZ nutrients should be in a regular banana and how much of an increase do we see in regenerative bananas. That has to happen
Mhm.
for the entire food system in a raw capacity. And the
Mhm.
bioavailability question makes me think about, will there become a day of reckoning for processing? Because if you think
Mm.
about our industrial methods producing food in the United States, it's really like, this is going to be a huge oversimplification, but it's twofold. Commodity crops grow as big and as fast as possible and then put them into formats where they can have the longest amount of shelf stability to reduce potential risk and liability of food
Right.
spoilage. So, will there become a day where we get to do that same level of nutrient density testing post food processing? And what
Mhm.
will that prove? And it kind of, for me, harkens back immediately to grains and flours and like what feels kind of like the reproliferation of stone ground in many,
Mhm.
many different categories, which I think is
Mhm.
fantastic. And maybe that category is a little bit ahead of the curve.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious to see how that plays out in all these other categories.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a shit ton of stuff there. I'm happy we're the guys that get to kind of comment on the things after they're delivered versus have to work the data, capture the data, and organize the data. Because, I mean, Eric and his team, and many others do a great job with all that. But I don't envy the task. That's not what I want to sign up for. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a brief discussion with him at Expo, and it sounds like they're so backlogged. Like they don't have enough equipment to do the testing that they need. So I think that should, I mean, if I had all the money in the world and I could start a business and like what could potentially move the needle in a fun, interesting way, like there seems to be such a huge demand for food testing right now.
Mm-hmm.
From all the perspective we just talked about, plus heavy metals and plastic toxicity and all these other things. And as awareness continues to improve around those topics, I think the demand for testing is going to skyrocket. So
Mm-hmm.
that's an interesting thing to look at.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Um, There were a couple sound bites that stuck out to me that I just made note of, and curious if you have anything to add. But I'll just share kind of those one by one, and we can riff on them a little bit. But Ryan from Smoketown did an amazing job in the lightning round opportunity that he had at Climate Day, and it was kind of all about how regenerative has the advantage, and we can win if we collaborate and work more together. And he laid out a pretty, I think, fun, compelling, and concise case for that. But he had a data point in there that media mentions of regenerative have grown at over a 40% CAGR since 2020. That is important. I think I would love to see it be higher, but I think it's significant at the amount that it is. And, you know, we still don't have the data to tie that into the amount of product claims and how it's being marketed to a consumer and the correlation or causation of all those factors. But that overall, I felt like was something I hadn't heard and a good, useful data point to cite that, just caught my eye and wanted a spotlight.
Yeah, I unfortunately missed his moment in the lightning round, and I wish I could comment more on it. I'm just so bummed that I missed it. But I think Ryan in general brings a really unique purview to the regenerative space, and I love how he takes some of that like big CPG framing and applies it to what's happening in the regenerative movement. So there's no doubt in my mind. I'm not surprised at all to hear that he made a really compelling case.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to touch on the one from Christine and her session? I mean, that's the one that I pulled out that resonated with me the most, but she shared a ton of really good stuff in there.
Yeah, the one AC listed on our outline is 20% of the U.S. market has values that would support regenerative products, and there's a diversity of demographics across socioeconomic status, education level, etc. Basically, everybody wants to be educated about regenerative products and how that impacts themselves, both their health and planetary health. To me, the most interesting point that Christine shared during her talk was the gap between regenerative awareness, I have heard this term, and
Mm-hmm.
regenerative understanding. And across all different demographics, that number was roughly 32 percentage points. So if it was 40% of people understand what regenerative ag is, which to me feels a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Generous. I think it's probably
Mm-hmm.
lower than that. But the
Mm-hmm.
awareness within the same survey was like 72% have heard the term.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, the big question then becomes, okay, how do we close that gap? And to me, the big answer is really what Ryan shared. is collaboration between these various groups. And if we can come up with a simplified message that everybody champions, and again, we're going to sound like an echo chamber in here because we've been saying this for years, but there's so much proof in her data that to me spoke to this answer of, we can really do this if we work together. And the most interesting point was like, once people understand what regenerative agriculture is, their desire to pay the premium and or make purchases for any brands or products that support those initiatives was, I can't remember the stat, but like significantly higher. So that's really, really compelling data. And it really simplifies the objective of the movement in my mind, at least from a retail perspective, that there's tremendous opportunity with collaboration.
Yeah, I think anything that would be compelling about this opportunity would come down to two buckets, right? Like, is there existing unmet demand? And according to the data she shared, there's existing unmet demand if we can basically reach those people better.
Correct. So yeah, the if there to me is there's a huge upside of unmet demand if we can concisely educate people to understand what regen is.
Mm-hmm. So that's one. And then two is like, can we increase the amount of unmet demand and like qualify that? And I got that as a yes also. So once again, all of us doing this work are biased for that to be positive and biased for that to be the outcome. But the survey that they did and the research that they did seemed to be very objective and well done. So I'm going to take it as a positive and take it as momentum moving forward. And just thank you to Christine and the Regenerative team for their leadership, gathering that data and really open source publishing it for the entire industry. They could have done that and just shared it with themselves and their brands. But, and Christine even said this to us, like, we want to share it with everyone so we can build the groundswell of momentum and have more information, which is exactly why we do everything that we do at the Institute with this podcast and everything else. Like, we're open sourcing everything as well so that we can just move forward as fast as possible.
Totally agree. One other piece I want to touch on from her presentation was what consumers are looking for today and all those different attributes and how they're essentially regenerative agriculture. So if we can just pair regen to those attributes, like it's a huge unlock. So agree with everything you said. Not anything else I'll want to add for that specific talk, but that was to me one of the most interesting moments during Climate Day was her specific presentation.
She was not during Climate Day. She was the next day, but
in my mind, if I'm in a seminar room and I'm listening to this, it's Climate Day. So it's also hard to tell like what day anything is during Expo, but I appreciate the correction.
That's true. I don't want anyone to question our journalistic integrity,
I mean, all day they should question mine, no doubt. And I'm glad you're here to hold me somewhat accountable.
All right. Last couple that I had that really just hit different for me. I was very fortunate to be a part of like a small, it was about 20, 30 people, Regen Ag Roundtable that Carlotta, previously of New Hope, now in a role with Informa, the parent company, hosted, which was amazing. So just shout out to Carlotta for her leadership and also for the group that she assembled. It was a really diverse group of brands, farmers, processors, media, kind of events people on the Informa side. Just, super cool, diverse crew that really had a robust and engaging dialogue for 4 or 5 hours. And two things, a lot of the things said really were, I think, important and kind of paradigm shifting, but two quotes were shared that I just wanted to share with our audience, which Jessica Chiartis at Regen Score, she shared that, each urban acre emits 80 times more than the most conventionally managed rural acre, which is just like insane. Wow. And so, her message was really like, yes, regen, yes, make agriculture as good as possible, but like, we need to just support agriculture because from an emissions perspective, like it's not even close. And I mean, that's just staggering, like 80 times. And it makes sense when you think about it, but you just don't realize it as you're going about your everyday life as an urban dweller, as most of us are. So that one hit different. And then there was a gentleman named A.G. Kawamura who grows strawberries here in Orange County. He grows strawberries that are sold in the well-picked label. If you've ever picked up that label at your grocery store, he was the Secretary of Agriculture for California under Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he was just kind of like a old wise elder in the group. I don't mean to call him old, but like that was his energy, which I really appreciated. And he talked about how the UN had put out some report where they didn't call farmers and ranchers in the report, in this big, like, whatever report on food and ag. They called them frontline actors. And he was like, frontline actors? Like, farmers are not frontline actors. Farmers are the people that built the stage that allows humanity to act out its dramas, tragedies, and epics. And I was like, damn, that hit different. So shout out to AG for that wisdom that stopped me in my tracks during that conversation.
I love that one. I was not in the room for that, but I think it's a great share. The other one, I can't remember the panel that Heather from Good Sam was on. And I honestly can't remember exactly what she said, but I think she does a fantastic job of like saying the quiet part out loud on stage. And I think she does it really, really well. And in particular in this time, in a way that didn't necessarily like point the finger at any one person or organization for doing wrong, but lifting up the potential of how we can all do right. So I appreciate her leadership and her ability to deliver those sorts of sentiments on stage, which I think a lot of people shy away from. So good on her. And I wish I could remember specifically like what it was that she said. Did you have any recollection?
I couldn't make it. I got trapped in a hall.
Right.
So I wasn't there. But you and Aaron were there, so I like felt okay about our presence there.
Yeah. And she did a great job, as she always does, you know, so good on her.
One thing we forgot to share on the iHeart Regen side or the coalition side is we held our first in-person event, which was so
How come
amazing.
we forgot to talk about that?
Yeah. So shout out to Aaron from our team. He organized and got us some space for Friday morning, and we had a breakfast that we invited basically all the exhibiting coalition brand members and other regenerative brands and various service providers that are current sponsors or potential sponsors and just other supporters in the industry. And man, it was so fun. Like, we live in this virtual Zoom world where you forget everyone has a lower body and is a real human being. And it was just amazing to be with that group in person, and super excited to find more ways to get that group together in person, because I think I can confidently say like it just fills people's cup in a unique way that we all need more of, for sure.
I totally agree. And what really stood out to me about the event is, you know, I mentioned before, there's like Expo safe spaces, right? Where there are, I think, according to your stats, 2.1% of exhibiting brands who really like believe in this and champion this regenerative movement. And it's probably understating how many people that are actually in the industry who care about it. So I want to caveat that. But for there to be an entire room of people who believe not just in their specific brand or certification, but sort of in our theory of change and how we can work together and to feel the energy of collaboration amongst these various human beings. It was really cool. It was super fun. It felt really positive. It felt really authentic. And it just felt, I don't know, grounded in a place of, or a spirit of true collaboration. And it felt like we were all seen and we all saw each other. You know, it was just a really cool event.
Yeah. And it was another one of those like milestones of progress to think back to. These two crazy guys started a podcast when they both lived in Bend, Oregon in the summer of 2022. And, you know, we've given some rallying speeches. We've had some events. Like we've done some stuff well. We've failed at some stuff, but we're continuing to make progress. And it seems like it's really resonating with the community that we want to serve, which I think is always the most important thing. So just shout out to all those folks who do support us, who also share that vision. And yeah, can't thank those people enough. It means a lot.
Totally agree.
What else, brother? Anything else?
I was just going to say, what else did we miss? I feel like that was a pretty encompassing recap of Expo West. So if you weren't there, like you just basically got like an Expo download from a regenerative perspective. But yeah, that feels, I'm scrolling through the outline to see if we missed anything, but I think we hit it.
Yeah, we are going to do a Q1 news roundup at some point. I had some stuff ready for that if we didn't hit enough time here, but we've gone an hour and 15. So we'll save that for another pod.
Man, time flies.
Yeah. And the march to episode 100 continues. So this is episode 96, and we have some very special guests coming up as we get to episode 100. So stick with us, stay tuned. We also have some very important kind of information launching as well on our end. So just appreciate all y'all for listening. All the support really means the world to us. And yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna go make a chai. Thank you for everything. And yeah, looking forward to 100, getting there.
All right, bro. Appreciate you. For transcripts, show notes, and more information on this episode, check out our website, regen-brands.com. That is regen-brands.com. You can also check out our YouTube channel, Regen Brands, for all of our episodes with both video and audio. The best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also subscribe to our newsletter, the Regen Brands Weekly, and follow our Regen Brands LinkedIn page to stay in the know on all the latest news, insights, and perspectives from the world of regenerative CPG. Thanks so much for tuning into the Regen Brands podcast. We hope you learned something new in this episode and it empowers you to use your voice, your time, your talent, and your dollars to help us build a better and more regenerative food system. Love you guys.